Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نويت التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والإنشاء والإفادة والاستفادة وحتى على تمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على خير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه ورضوانه سبحانه وتعالى. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and peace and blessings be upon his beloved messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today is lesson 7 of the 77 branches of strong families. My name is Omer, and I will be covering points 39 to 44. Sheikh Raz couldn't attend today. He just said he had to take care of something, so I'll be conducting today's class by myself, I guess. So the points that we're conducting today are, there's 6 points that we're going to cover. This is number 39 was awaiting one's family members when entering paradise. I'll just list them so that you're aware of what we're going to cover today. 40 is to guide your family with wisdom in honoring the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 41 is to supplicate for your family members. 42 is to not harbor malice towards any of your family. 43 is to not eat alone, and 44 is to not remind others of favors. So as you can see, they're all very simple concepts, but it's things that we know are the right thing to do, but it's just the implementation part that sometimes we forget, including myself. So I'm reminding you as I'm reminding myself about all of these points of subhanAllah. So the first one, awaiting one's family members when entering paradise. I was a little surprised when I read that one in the book by Imam Suyuti on brotherhood. That is actually one of the etiquettes of a believer with other believers. So that's not to mention, of course, for one's family, that for some of us that we will be accepted into paradise, but they stop to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they will not enter paradise until so and so of their either a friend or someone in particular enters with them. So subhanAllah, so they make that sort of intercession. And Imam Suyuti mentions that that's even if the duration of the process of accountability is long, and that he allows, and then on top of that, he's waiting for his friend, and he also allows the person to partake in their good deeds on the day of judgment. So you mentioned that's true brotherhood. So that would be especially the case for one's family members, that one waits for them when entering paradise, so that if anyone's in trouble, that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them and ask them to enter them with you in paradise, and inshallah, likewise, they would inshallah do likewise for you. So if you're the one who's barred from paradise, or your accountability is extra long, that there are people who are waiting for you to enter paradise, and that can only be attained, like somebody wanting that that level of love and goodness for you is only if you have a very, very strong relationship with them, obviously. So that's even more reason to strengthen your relationship with your fellow family members, that you don't know what the teachers say is that you don't know who might make intercession for you on the day of judgment. That's why you should be good and kind to everyone. So that's especially the case with one's family members, that perhaps if one of them attain paradise and you don't, that they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for your forgiveness, and that's the means of you entering paradise. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that. They also say that not to underestimate anyone, like thinking, oh, so-and-so, their dua is not that big of a deal, that maybe they're not that practicing, but in reality, we don't know what their true state is, right? Or our own true state. So that person might look like they're not practicing right now, but in the reality of the matter is, like, when their life unfolds, that perhaps they're meant to become of the best of believers later in their life. So their dua is something that's accepted, and you don't know. And likewise, you can't assume that your own state is one of like, oh, that, you know, what's the common way to say it is like you have paradise in the bed, you're doing everything right, you're praying, you're striving, because you don't know what your end state will be, right? So you can't assume that you're better than a single person. That's why, you know, you're seeking the dua or intercession of other believers, like, you know, regardless of what they might seem to you right now or with their current state, because people change, and that's the nature of people, that the heart continuously turns, and you don't know whose dua is accepted. So that was the first etiquette, number 39. So waiting for one's paradise when entering paradise, waiting for one's family members when entering paradise. The next point is point 40, to guide them with wisdom in honoring the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that one's a bit of a touchy one, because I know a lot of times parents mean well when they're trying to call their children to what's right, and you know, sometimes they don't use the best of judgment, or they mean well, but nasiha to other people, as we all know, it has to be done in a very kind and gentle manner, and it needs a lot of wisdom and thought, that one can't almost shove the opinions of a person. You know, you can't change other people. You can work on yourself, you can strive to rectify your own behavior, but for other people, including one's children, you can't almost drag a person to believe. Sheikh Razi always uses the example of goats. I don't know if you can hear me, but he'll talk about how if you want the goat to come to a certain place, that if you pull it, it'll start bleeding, you know, making that bad sound, and resisting, right? And you pull harder, and you know, he said that, you know, they just resist even more. Whereas if you lead with gentleness, that the goat will just come with you. They use other examples. I know in the Dale Carnegie book I was mentioning last week, he talks about how there was some animal they were trying to get into the barn, and they were pushing and shoving, and again the animal's resisting, and then one of the female workers on the farm came and just let the animal just suck on her finger, and then she just led them into the barn. It's just like how that ease, you know, or being easy with people often tends to get them to cooperate much faster than, you know, trying to shove a certain way of doing things, or trying to force somebody to change when they're just not ready, and just not saying it in a you know, pleasant way. So it's really important to give a lot of thought when one is trying to counsel someone and improve their behavior. They say that you can't really counsel someone to improvement until you really, like, especially in your own family, that you've really prayed for it. And so I know a lot of the teachers recommend that one prays for, you know, people that they're concerned about, especially at tahajjud time, that one wakes before Fajr, you know, and then when they're standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and there's absolute silence in the house, and it's just you, and you know, you're supplicating and you're praying, and you're really asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that special time for these people. That's honestly the first step before you're trying to call anyone with wisdom to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and doing that repeatedly, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on this person and guide them to the straight path, and guide even yourself to the straight path, that we don't know, like I said before, what our ending is. So you don't know, but to really pray for them firstly, to love them, and then use wisdom when you approach them about a certain thing, especially family members, because you want to inspire and get them to do things without being told or without feeling forced. I think sometimes we make the mistake, again, with the parent and child relationship, that the parent sometimes forces the child to do something that they don't want to do or they don't understand. So it's more of, you want to plant the seeds of the child, like loving to implement what you're calling them to, and having them implement it themselves. And I know sometimes that's a little bit difficult, because sometimes, especially in this day and age, we always want like change like quickly. Everything we want, whenever we want something, we want it fast. But with a lot of things, that's just not how it is. It's you just have to at least plant the seeds of what you want, and then inshallah things will change, and inshallah the person will come around on their own when they're ready. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned the famous hadith that I'm sure we all know, Adinun Nasiha, that religion is to counsel. That's related by Muslim. And Imam Suyuti in his book on brotherhood mentions that fellows are in goodness as long as they advise one another. When they make peace with one another by not reforming each other, they shall perish. So he's talking about how sometimes it's almost considered like bad etiquette to you know, what's the word, you know, call someone to the good, or not reprimand them, but you know, correct them in any way. Sometimes they say, you know, just focus on yourself and don't correct other people, because it's not really good etiquette. But so it's not to that extent that you can't, if you see somebody's doing something wrong, we're not saying don't correct them, but you have to give a lot of thought on how to do that with wisdom, how to do it in a way that would be most acceptable to them, how to do it in a way that doesn't put them down or completely reject the message that you're trying to tell them. And that can only be done, you know, with the utmost kindness and wisdom, that you have to really think through the situation. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he also said that you can achieve through kindness or gentleness, or take with kindness or gentleness that which you can't take through harshness. So like being harsh with someone, it just doesn't work. And unfortunately, we see that a lot in our community today, that people feel like they can just go up to somebody that they don't know in the masjid and start correcting them on things when they don't know. Like there's stories of, you know, people who are new to Islam, leaving Islam from how they're treated in the masajid. Likewise in homes, sometimes there's a certain family member who's more practicing, maybe more practicing than other people, but really comes down on the other people so that they don't want to practice, right? Like when people look to that example where they're being dealt with harshness, and then say, if that's what the religion really is, I don't want to be a part of that we have to really fear that if we do make anyone feel that way, and we're the cause of somebody leaving Islam or not wanting to, or being really, what is the word, that they are discouraged from practicing their religion just from seeing like your own state, that is something to fear. So it's really important to use that wisdom and gentleness and kindness, but and gently call people to Allah. So we're not saying ignore their faults, but to use wisdom and do it in the best of manners. And it doesn't even always have to be direct. Like you can use indirect means, like telling a story and sort of going around and mentioning a different way they can handle it. An example of that would be the best person I know who is like that is actually my mother-in-law, mashallah. She's like, if she wants to correct you on something, she won't say you like didn't do like such and such, and you know you really messed this up, and next time do this, like, because she knows that would hurt you. So you'll be sitting with her and she'll start telling a story of, for example, a neighbor, and it'll be a very kind of very similar circumstance that she's talking about, and you can almost match what she's talking about, but she'll be talking about someone else. She say, and I can't believe, I like one example I remember she was telling us about somebody who wasn't helping an elder, and the elder fell in front of them, and you know, the people didn't go to help the elder who fell because they were worried, because it was a lady elder, like an old woman, and it was some brothers who didn't know if they could help her because she was a woman. So they didn't help her, and she had fallen. So she was talking about the importance of knowledge in that circumstance. So likewise, like just going around and telling a story that you could take, like in that story she was talking about the importance of helping elders, the importance of knowledge and spreading knowledge so that you know, you don't make mistakes that are so clearly wrong in the name of religion. That was something that bothered her. So so using that kind of wisdom when you're trying to correct another person. The next point for today was point 41, which is to supplicate for your family members. And that's something that we often forget, that, you know, inshallah, everyone prays 5 times a day and they do their supplications afterwards, but ask yourself, when was the last time you actually prayed for your family members by name? Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on them. Last time you prayed for the people in your household, like sincerely from the heart, maybe by name, you know, and asking for Allah to have mercy on them. Like oftentimes we forget these things. That's why I said, like, a lot of these points we know, but sometimes we just forget to implement them. Imam Suyuti in his book mentions that we should not forget to pray for their forgiveness, pardon, and mercy whenever he finds time exclusive with his Lord, regardless of whether it's during the day or night, in prostration or otherwise, that we remember our family. And he was talking about brethren, like, so this is especially the case with your family members, that you would want to pray for your, especially your parents, pray for your children, remember them by name, remember your past ancestors by name, or if you don't know their names, just, you know, make the intention that, you know, your grandmother, your great-great-grandmother, like there's so many people in the chain of all the people that are in your chain that brought you into being, like to pray for all of them, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy on them, may they be forgiven, may they enter into Jannatul Firdaus, you know, may He accept their striving, and we know that benefits them when people pray for one another, even if they've passed away, or especially if they've passed away, that counts on their record, that they left people behind that are praying for them. So it's really important not to forget that. It's also very helpful if you're struggling in a particular relationship with any of your family members, that rather than argue with them, to pray for them. And as we said before, the best time to pray for a family member, especially if your relationship is under strain, is at Tahajjud time. So you wake up early before Fajr and you know, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rectify things and ask for His mercy, and just pray for them in general as you pray for yourself, inshallah. Sometimes we forget and we're just making dua for ourselves and our forgiveness, and you know, just from the heart making dua for one another is important. And they say that also goes back to that none of you truly, there's a hadith, none of you truly believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. So just as you would love to be forgiven, to sincerely ask from the depths of your heart for another person to be forgiven, you know, inshallah, it's accepted and it makes a difference, inshallah. So just to remember other people. Point number 42 was to not harbor malice towards other people, but especially the family members. And that is, you know, feelings of anger or dislike or hatred, that one really works on uprooting that from your heart if that exists, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cure you of it. and to work on that relationship for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about that last week, that sometimes something like that is hard for a person, that it's hard to, you're really not getting along, you're really angry about something that happened in the past, and you have like dislike for a person. It's almost like, you're carrying a stone. It's a burden upon your heart to have bad feelings towards another person, and it's even worse if it's somebody in your own household. So, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive you for that and to remove it from your heart, and then to, if you have that kind of feeling towards another person, what helps is to really force yourself to look at their good points. Look at, the good that they do. Maybe they're very kind to children. Maybe they're very cheerful. Maybe they bring happiness to other people, and really focus yourself on, their good points. Another thing one can do if one's feeling anger or dislike for another person is to actually make dua for them. So, whenever those feelings arise where you're like, you see the person and you feel that feeling of, I really don't like this person, that you can make dua for them. You're asking, when you feel that feeling, you start saying, oh Allah, please enter them into Jannat al-Firdaus. May they drink from your hand on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. Like the highest things you can think of, you're making these du'as. They say that those feelings of rancor or malice or enmity that you have in your heart will actually dissipate, because those feelings are actually from the shaitan, that he's egging you on to remember such and such, or look at such and such, so that you dislike that person. So when you actually make dua from your heart for that person, that he sort of backs away, and then it stops. So those are some points to remember. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that 3 are those that if they exist in any person, Allah will forgive him other than those. So these are good traits that if you have them, that Allah forgives even more from your record. The first one was someone who dies without ascribing partners to Allah. The second was that he was not a sorcerer following magic. And the third was he harbored no malice against his fellow. So it's mentioned in this hadith, somebody who doesn't have any rancor in their heart or dislike for others in their heart, that they are forgiven even more than that. Imam Suyuti mentions in his book, anyone who harbors malice, deception, plotting, or cheating against any of the people is an impostor in the path of people of rarity, and it's not permitted for him to be a caller to Allah. That one should not, and that sometimes happens in life. It might not even be a family member, just somebody sort of rubs you the wrong way or does something that really upsets you, but you still maintain this almost not hatred, but like, or it could be hatred or dislike, or you just really don't like when they're around. That when somebody works on uprooting that from their heart, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there's an incredible amount of reward, and you get forgiven your sins, inshallah. It's also much lighter for the heart that you're able to progress when you are more forgiving towards other people, and making dua for them. And like I said in the beginning, that it's really like when you allow your heart to keep that malice or dislike for that certain person, it's like you're carrying a stone, and that's why it causes, actually, they say even physical tension, that when you have that, like, it's adding to your stress, you're thinking about it, you're getting more and more worked up about something from the past, that this, it increases your stress, and they talk about the effects of stress on the body, right? Whereas if you forgive someone for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just let it go, that it's like a stone is lifted off you, and you're better able to travel or progress in your path of seeking knowledge and sincerity and rectifying one's own wrongs. when you do that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The 43rd point on the 77 branches of happy families is to not eat alone, and that's something that we unfortunately all sometimes do. They say that the proper etiquette is if you want to eat, that you call someone to eat with you, even if they mention stories of the companions that where they even call people from the street to eat with them. So that probably wouldn't work today, but if you were in a good community, you could, or you could take your food outside and offer it to other people who are eating. The teachers mentioned that when you share food amongst other people, and this was something I wasn't aware of before, but I've actually found benefit in it. They said that when you share food with other people, that it actually strengthens your relationship with those people. And there was one funny circumstance where I was mentioning this to, it was a group of family, we were all together, and there's actually a little bit of tension. And one person was eating a sandwich, so I mentioned this to them, and I said, let's all share this sandwich because it strengthens the relationship between all of us. And it was so funny how that sort of broke the tension in the room, and everybody was smiling, and then we were all like sharing, like it was just a cheese sandwich from Tim Hortons, I think, but it was like there was so much barakah in it when you have that intention that we're trying to strengthen our relationship with one another. We're implementing a sunnah of sharing and not eating alone, and it was just very nice, mashallah. So just making that intention. So if you're preparing something at home, that you don't just make your own food and then go and sit in a corner and eat by yourself. Rather, you would, if you're reheating leftovers, then you'd call everybody who's at home to come and eat with you. Or if you're at home alone, if you can tolerate to wait for somebody else to come home, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you're not eating alone and that you're welcoming to that person, that, like we mentioned before, that strengthens the relationships between you with your other family members. Secondly, you wouldn't be eating alone, so you'd be implementing a sunnah, which there's incredible reward for. And you'd also be doing service to your family by if you go and reheat food or prepare food for people, that there's reward for that. And that goes for, and we're not saying, what do I want to say? But it's not just like the women who go and reheat the food and wait for the men, because sometimes that's always the assumption that rather like the men can reheat food, even if they don't know how to cook. Like mashallah, Sheikh Ross, he doesn't know how to cook, but he can make really good eggs, and so sometimes like he'll cook and he'll say, like he'll make it for anybody, right? That's there. And so they're pretty good. He's getting better at cooking, mashallah. So when you do these things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sharing and eating together from especially the same dish, that strengthens the relationship. In the book, Imam Suyuti mentions that only the worst of people is someone who eats alone, because I think it also has that implication of almost greed, that you can't wait for someone else to come so that you can share your food with them. In some cases, obviously, it's not possible. Like, for example, some people do live alone, so they would eat alone, but they'd have that intention that if someone else was there, that they would eat with them, and they might be somebody, like even if they're in that case, they might frequently invite people over to eat with them, or prepare food for others and go and eat with other people. Those are other scenarios, but I think the condemnation here is if you're eating alone and you had the choice of eating with other people, you had the option of sharing with other people, and you choose to just eat alone, that it's not light. Ali al-Khawas, who was the teacher of Imam Suyuti, mentioned, do not eat on your own or in the dark. Do not waste anything of the food. It is only presented to you that you eat it and not drop it on the ground. And as we know from the sunnah that even if food drops on the ground, to have that respect for it and eat it, that there's a lot of barakah in that as well. And of course, that's especially if you're in a place that, like, you're at home and you know the floor is clean. I know some people who do that even if they're outside. I think it's okay to not eat it if you're fearing harm, like if it's in a dirty place that it's fallen and that it could be harm and make you sick, then that would be an exception. But in a lot of cases, like for example at home, to pick up food that's fallen and eat it for implementing the sunnah, there's reward for that, inshallah. And we mentioned how it increases the barakah of the food and it strengthens the relationship between the people who share in it. I think Habib Hossein Saqaf was talking about the beautiful example of like taking an apple and cutting it into pieces and sharing that apple. So he was saying that if a husband and wife were in disagreement or arguing about something, that it's good for them to share food because that would strengthen their relationship between them. So that's just something to remember. The last point I wanted to cover today was to not remind others of favors. The Imam Sudi mentions that that's especially after arguing and the person's forgotten that deed. That sometimes you're arguing and then in the argument it comes out that remember I did such and such for you, and you did something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another person, and then you remind them of that. So he talks about the ugliness of that characteristic, especially when you're arguing that you bring that up as a point, but it's applicable to any time that you don't remind, if you do good for another person, you don't remind them of it later on. Because they talk about it's an indication of lack of sincerity in it, that almost if you did it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why are you reminding his creation about what you did for them? If it was truly for Allah, that it wouldn't even come to your mind to mention it again to them. In the book, he was a little hard on it because he said that it's indication of lack of sincerity in it and a proof of lowly essence. And he compared it to an abscess that doesn't heal, that it's just continuously open, that one doesn't remind others of the good they've done for another person. He said that somebody of noble essence never reminds others of the favors or things that they've done for them, and rather you see the other person as superior. So if you've done something for another person, that you don't view it as, I did something great, even in your head, like, oh, look at, I did something great, I gave so-and-so such and such, or I did such and such for this person. Rather, you look at it as, that person is the great one because they accepted or was there for you to do this to, whether you gave them something or maybe you did something for them, because of their existence, that you had the chance to attain this reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are the great one. You should be grateful to them actually that they accepted that thing from you, because that is where you earn the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you did something for them, and because they accepted it or they were there, that you received the reward for that. So you're grateful to them, you see them as a high rank, higher than your own, you see them as somebody who's beloved to Allah, that these things happened for them, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained those things for them. It's not really you, it's something that was ordained for them from Allah. So you see them as having that high rank, higher than your own. And there was also another hadith that there are three are whom that Allah will not look at on the day of judgment nor purify them, and they will have a painful punishment. And he listed them as one who trails their garment, second, one who reminds of favors, and the third was one who sells his goods with a false oath. So we can see how they're listed here, that it's just considered a very ugly characteristic to to remind someone of the good you've done for them. So these are the 6 points that we want to talk about today. So the first one was awaiting one's family members when entering paradise and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive them and enter them with you into paradise if you're someone who is entering paradise, and if anyone here enters paradise, to remember all of us, inshallah, that we also are given that high station, inshallah. The 40th one was to guide people with wisdom in honoring the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So using wisdom when you have to correct anyone in your family, and do it in the best way, and to pray for them at tahajjud time, and really use a lot of wisdom to make them want to do it on their own, and not to be forceful or harsh in that. The 41st one that we talked about was to supplicate for your family members. We talked about how we all pray, but we often forget to remember them by name. 42 was not to harbor malice, and the treatment for that, how to, if you feel anger or rancor towards anyone, but especially a family member, that one makes dua for them, ask Allah to forgive them, and to actively work on that relationship so that, and look at their good points. 43 was not to eat alone, and to take the steps to eat with other people in one's household, and when one withholds them, refrains from eating because of that they're seeking to eat with other people, and perhaps waits even when they're hungry, that there's a lot of reward for that, and there's a lot of reward for the khidmah or service to the other people in your household when you're heating food for them and striving to eat with them. And the last point we talked about was not reminding others of favors. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we ask him for his knowledge and guidance, and to help us to be people of adab and people who implement these great characteristics that we find in the sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we ask him for his forgiveness for all of our many, many shortcomings. And we ask him to bless all of our households, and let peace and tranquility and sakina descend on each and every one of our households. Ameen, ameen, ameen. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.